Welcome all you Incorrigible Lights. I'm your Master Dungeon Master Leland Steele, and I'm here with one other member of the Incorrigible Party.
That is me. I am Bill. Welcome, everybody.
And of course, our esteemed guest. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. My name is John, but I go on the interwebs by Double Crit Fail because Double Crit Success was taken. I am on TikTok and YouTube, and I think I'm on Blue Sky. It's hard to keep track of all the different platforms, what I'm on or not. So yeah, I'd say YouTube is my main home on the web. And yeah, I make videos about D&D and also do occasional funny shorts. And yeah, I love TTRPGs.
I mean, then that means you're the perfect guest to have onto this particular show, because that is, of course, who we like to speak to, as we are also very passionate about the hobby. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I've definitely been perusing your channel as of late. Of course, knowing you're coming on, I got to do some history. And one of your videos, which was very interesting to me, kind of struck out right away, was about you basically running a session for ChatGPT.
Yes, yeah.
Kind of delving into like the AI side of what DMing or AI players. Like, what exactly is it that interests you about that?
Well, this was maybe about a year or so after ChatGPT came out, maybe a little bit longer than that. But lots of people had explored with the idea of using ChatGPT as their dungeon master, where you would basically have it narrate a scene and then you would respond with what action you'd want to do, and you would just go back and forth like that. And I decided, well, what if we try to turn the tables? What if I try to actually run a session for ChatGPT? What would that be like? So I did so, and funny enough, the ChatGPT decided that it wanted to be, oh gosh, what are they called? From Eberron.
Oh, the Warforged.
Warforged.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is
which
funny.
I thought was very fitting.
That's really funny.
And, I was just making it up as I went and sending it on its adventure. It was a little sketchy because it was making its own rules behind the scenes, so I never saw a single dice roll, but it told me the result. But yeah, it was really interesting to see how it thought things through and the decisions that it made, and especially at the end, it made kind of a decision I was not expecting in a combat scenario. So I would say, and then of course, I went to Reddit and I posted this thing about, hey, if you're a new DM, maybe consider, and you want to like gain confidence in your skills, maybe consider trying to run a session for ChatGPT. And that was probably the worst thing I could have possibly done.
Yeah, I imagine the backlash was immediate and swift and just in the eyes of many, many Redditors.
Which I understand. Most of the very short feedback before I just like, oh, delete that. That never happened. Was that you can't really gain a skill set without having real players. And I think there is value to that. But I feel like also if you're just someone who is scared as hell to try it for the first time, but you're also interested, can I do this? There's absolutely no risk to it. So it's my personal opinion that it might be a good way for someone to dip their toe in the water, but I absolutely understand the perspective of anyone who thinks that's heresy.
I 100% agree. If your post was actually like how you just described it a second ago, I think it's completely valid. If you're just looking to gain a little bit of confidence, there's nothing like doing trial runs, right? And that's pretty much I don't know, there's perhaps lower risk or less scary ways of doing a trial run, but I mean, it's essentially a computer. It's not going to judge you. So I've always been very nervous about DMing, so I think that would be a fantastic option. I mean, I don't know that was really an option around when I first ran a game, but yeah, it seems like Reddit, which is very uncharacteristic for Reddit, misunderstood what you were suggesting and critiqued you on something that you weren't necessarily a statement you weren't making,
Right. And then I said, screw you, Reddit. I'm just going to go run, D&D sessions with ChatGPT and go have my own fun.
I mean, even more so now than when you originally made your video. Like, the AI is just like such a hot button topic. It's an immediate like trigger for some people, right? Like, this, you mentioned those two letters in consecutive order, and it's like, whoa, pump the brakes here. What the fuck are you doing? Putting your AI bullshit into my X, my whatever. Don't put your peanut butter into my chocolate here, kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But I feel like the way you are approaching it and the kind of mindset you have with it, I also agree with that. AI just artificial intelligence simply should be utilized as a tool in this way that you were describing. It's just human nature to take something and be lazy with it. Just be complete. That's all it enables is people's laziness to have it do it for them, do the job for them, do whatever it is for them. Have it make them an entire session for them or a campaign or whatever, right? I just think, yeah, I don't know. It's such a hot button issue. If you're utilizing it as a tool and as part of your tool set, whether it is just DMing or whatever creative endeavor, I suppose. And I think that's where it, when you're like, oh, how can it lend itself to creativity is also that side of it too. Like, how can you attribute any type of substance to this ones and zeros that are getting spit out at you, right? And I was thinking about this today too. If like the three of us gave the exact same prompt to ChatGPT, what would it give out? Would it give us three slightly different answers? Would it give us three exact different responses or scenarios and whatever we're asking it? Like, that's what I don't know. Because so how homogenous is it? Like if more and more people, thousands to millions of people are adopting and utilizing this service in very similar ways, like in some cases, inevitably in identical ways, what type of information are you getting back? Are you still getting back variations? Is it going to be identical output versus identical input? Like I wonder about that.
Well, I feel like as we start, they probably would be very similar, but I feel like it would very quickly branch off. And by the time we were done, we would have vastly different stories.
Yeah, especially if it's like repeated input. Again, if you're repeatedly using this tool in here or this area here or this area there, yeah, of course, that's going to for sure make the possibilities. I mean, it is, again, very similar to a table full of players. If you have 4 or 5 players at your table, that's 4 or 5 different iterations of branches that can be sprouted from every one of them, right?
Yeah. Well, as far as the controversy of it, which I completely get, I feel like for me, there's 2 kind of lines in the sand that I always try not to cross. The first is I would never publish something to sell that used AI art, just because I feel like that is encroaching on the territory of real artists because that's, money that. So if given the option, I would prefer with a commercial product to sell something made by a human as far as art goes. And of course, with what I write too. The other line in the sand that I kind of have is with corporations using AI, because come on, you should have a budget for this. For, scrappy underdogs or people just at their home games, knock yourselves out. It is a creative tool. If you would use AI to make tokens for your home game or your digital game virtual tabletop, knock yourselves out. But when I see Coca-Cola do a Christmas commercial entirely made of AI, or Disney says with their new Fantastic Four poster there is no AI, but I have very serious doubts about that. Those are instances where I'm like, come on. We're at extreme late stage capitalism at this point.
Yeah. And,
yeah, exactly.
And also, I've seen examples of big corporations that have big time money and they put out something. Not only did they use AI for it, but they couldn't even pay for someone to spend 15-30 minutes to review the photo and be like, oh, that's a glaringly obvious sign of AI, let's touch that up. Oh, it has 5 fingers on its left hand or 6 fingers on its left hand instead of 5. Maybe we should fix that.
Are you an AI?
They're on to me. Well, technically, I don't know, is the thumb a finger?
Oh gosh, now we're getting philosophical.
But yeah, that kind of leaves a sour taste in the mouth.
If it's not, I never learned how to count.
Is it number 1 or number 5?
We're getting philosophical again.
It's 5 because you start with the pointer and then your index, right? You go 1, 2, 3,
You
4,
go
5,
pointer to pinky and then back to thumb?
And then back to thumb. Yeah, you absolutely
What are
do.
you?
Oh, come on. You don't hold up 4 fingers with your pinky down and the other 4 up.
You know what? You're right. I do the same thing.
I am 100% right.
See, now I'm like trying to figure out what I do. I feel like no, I think I do start with my pointer and then, middle
Yeah,
pinky,
ring,
ring, pinky, and then
and then
thumb.
thumb. Thumb's number 5.
Yeah. And of course, the Germany meme, it's like you can tell someone is a poser if they have the 3 fingers
Right.
up instead of the thumb and,
Yeah.
2 fingers.
Wasn't that there was a movie where the guy was undercover and he counted the wrong way and that blew his cover?
Yeah. Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah.
But that's actually a real thing in German. It's like part of the culture. It's just like that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting concept, and like I said earlier, I totally agree with. I think there's nothing wrong with using AI if you want to sort of get out some of the jitters and just like practice, how it feels to be a DM. You're probably not going to get any fantastic insight into DMing or like, as Reddit said, really advance your skills to a large degree. But if nerves and anxiety are the main thing, I think that would be a great use of AI.
I think it'll allow you to work on a set of skills, like not overall, but yeah, definitely a part of it. I agree. So, John, how did you get into TTRPGs then?
when it comes to TTRPGs, I was kind of a late bloomer. I never played it as a kid because it involved math, and math was scary. Or that was at least the impression that I had. And that was back. I don't even know the history too much of what edition it would have been when I was younger, but it would have been like 3.5 around the time I was in college. It would have been like second edition when I was growing up. So yeah, it probably was more crunchy back in those days. I think what actually made me realize that there's a lot more to it than math is Penny Arcade. They had their YouTube show, and it was Acquisitions Incorporated. This was probably like 10, 15 years ago. And I think Christopher Perkins was a DM on one of their shows as a guest. And I just found this story that he was telling so amazing, as well as the other players at the table. And then from there, I got into the Adventure Zone, which, if anyone hasn't heard that podcast, it's absolutely amazing, especially their first arc, the balance arc. And that's when I really got the itch of something that this is what I wanted to play.
That was my launching off point, was the Adventure Zone as well.
Yeah, it's an excellent show. And then, of course, we go through the challenge that probably everybody who gets into D&D faces, which is, okay, I want to play. Who do I play with? So, I didn't really have anyone who was close to me who would be interested in trying it out. So I think originally went to like Roll20. And of course, I would see these posts of join this game. And you would have like one DM and then like 50 responses for I want to join your game. So I never got into one of those. And so I discovered if I want to play D&D, the only way I'm going to be able to do it is if I actually DM. And I kind of jumped right into it. I probably got like most of the rules wrong when I started. I remember like a specific instance when a character fell for the first time unconscious. I didn't realize that you're supposed to make one death saving roll per turn. I thought you just rolled them all right there
Oh, wow.
until like you either died or succeeded,
That's
which I guess
funny.
is let's call it a home rule or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I had a lot to learn and a lot of growth, and just over time, yeah, you learn with experience. Back in those days, I couldn't use ChatGPT either. So
Yeah. So you jumped in with DMing as your very first experience playing TTRPG.
yeah,
Wow.
and shortly after that, I lived in Hayward, California at the time, which is in kind of near San Francisco. And so I looked for a local gaming store, and I found one that hosted D&D every Wednesday. So I was able to jump into a game as a player, and I think their sessions went on with a single adventure that lasted about, so I want to say 7 weeks. And my first DM who I actually got to play in person with, his name was Patrick, and he was absolutely amazing. Couldn't ask for a better first DM. And that's something that I feel like is very hit or miss for some people, where if you play D&D for the first time and you have a bad dungeon master, it's very easy to be like, oh, this game is awful.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to have the right first experience. Otherwise, you're going to judge it in a negative way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, first impressions are huge. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like having sex. Your first time having sex can be bad, but if you're gonna finish, it's still gonna be great when you finish. So and you want to do it more. But if you have a bad first TTRPG game, it ain't gonna finish great because it's gonna be probably as bad as it started. And you can be turned right off.
Yeah. So I would say I can't imagine anybody listening to this podcast now hates D&D. Or maybe there are some. Maybe they're into other TTRPGs. But if you've tried to play D&D and you did not have a good time, I would say maybe try again at a different table, because every table is different.
Yeah. That's great advice.
What about you guys?
I've been fortunate that Leland was my first, and he is an excellent DM.
We had a great finish. Yeah,
Yeah, we did. Yeah, took a long time. We were all pretty worn
It took
out.
about
by
5
the time we
years
got
for that
there.
first campaign, but we had a great finish.
Let me ask, how did you two connect? Do you know each other IRL, as they say?
No, all of the Incorrigibles met in the Twitter space, like 2018-ish, I think, around there. And we were all kind of just sniping comments back and forth, tweets back and forth, and taking the piss with each other a bit. And I guess one day we're like, hey, let's do this, because Bill and Elena had never played a TTRPG before at all. So when they first started the show, when we launched in 2019, it was geared as like, okay, we'll teach you how to play, basically. So it was more like of a learning experience,
Right.
listening. So, and then finally we got to meet in person. I didn't meet the rest of them until 2023 because of pandemic shenanigans.
Yeah.
We were supposed to meet in 2020 at Origins Games Fair in Columbus, and obviously that didn't go as planned.
It's kind of wild that we played for how many years would be? I don't know. Quite a few years before ever actually all of us meeting in person.
Yeah, my main home game that I play, they're all people that I know through different aspects of my life. So, like, one of them is someone who's a friend from college. Another one is a high school friend's cousin. Another one is a high school friend's husband, that kind of thing. But we have all like grown so close that when I got married, my D&D party were, my best men at my wedding. And that was
That's
actually
awesome.
the first time that they had ever all met in person. Like we have maybe, oh gosh, 3 or 4 players that are local to my area, and then one that was still living on the coast, because I've kind of moved back and forth in this country. So that was like the moment when we're all like meeting for the first time, but it felt like you're meeting a friend you've known forever. And sadly, we did not play D&D when we were all together in person, because I was busy like getting married and stuff.
Yeah, well, that kind of takes up a bit of time, I imagine.
It's a testament to how special I think TTRPGs are, D&D and the like. I think it can be an excellent way to grow really deep and meaningful friendships with people. Like Leland and John and Emily, I consider some of my best friends, and I felt that way before we'd ever even met in person, which is kind of crazy. I was initially very, very reluctant actually to play D&D. I took quite a bit of haggling and convincing from them and from my wife Elena. Initially, I just was like, not really even sure that it seemed like something I would like, and kind of weird, and I don't know if that's the sort of thing that I would think is fun. And then B, also just I'm a little bit of a socially anxious person, and thought, like having the spotlight shone on me and it's my turn to like act or whatever, right? That's like, no thanks, that does not sound like fun. So it took a little convincing, but listening to the Adventure Zone was really helpful, because I think, if I remember correctly, it's been many years now, but the father had never played D&D, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, this older dude, who, if he can do it, They seem to all be having fun. I'm sure I could give it a shot. And also just sort of, I think my perceptions of what D&D is were very far from reality as well. So listening to other people play kind of opened up my eyes to, oh, okay, this is actually something that seems kind of cool. But yeah, it's I'm very, very happy that I said yes, because I think it's really helped us grow very, very close in an interesting way that I didn't expect from just something that I thought is such a small thing, just playing a game together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cool.
Develop so many skills too, and there's so many different ways to experience the hobby. There are people that are amazing crafts people that can create incredible terrain or figures or painting, and then there are amazing storytellers that can come up with funny as hell stories or sad stories or just like these emotionally resonant adventures that you are a main character in. What else is there? I just mentioned story and
Math nerds who like to
math.
min max. Yeah.
There you go.
It's I think there's a little bit of something for everyone, really. I've become like, a bit of a person who likes to shout from the rooftops whenever it comes up in conversation. It's really interesting how many people like it's a definitely a hobby that has exploded in popularity over the past, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. But there's still so many people who are like I was, just really kind of have no idea what it is, and the idea that they have is maybe very inaccurate. So yeah, I really like to try and encourage people to give it a shot, because there's probably something in it for them, whether they are a crafty person or you know X, Y, or Z type of creative, or maybe they're
Or
not.
you just really like combat
Yeah,
and
exactly.
tactical movement on a
Yeah, that's true.
board,
Yeah.
and or if you just like rolling dice and seeing numbers go down,
Yes,
any of that.
the clack clack
Clack clack.
can be very satisfying.
Someone, I'm sure there are people out there who have very little interest in D&D but are still dice goblins who
Yeah.
just like
Oh,
have
I'm
like
sure of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, hell, you might just like making a funny voice.
Oh yeah, acting. Oh my
There you
gosh, how
go.
could I forget that?
Yeah, that was something that I think was probably the thing that I was worried most about, was that I'm going to be expected to be some professional voice actor and all this sort of stuff, which the character that I played for many, many years, more or less didn't really, it was essentially my voice. I mean, there was a bit of difference in cadence and whatnot, but you don't have to. It doesn't matter if you want to do a voice or not, or that's cherry on top if you want to do it, but not essential.
Yeah, I definitely mix back and forth between, you know, my character does this or I do this. I could literally be in the same session, just what do I feel like at this moment, narrating what I do or what happens. I'm curious. Is everyone? 5e was the first edition that I played. Has anyone played an edition that they started prior to 5e, or their first edition was not 5e?
My first was 4, but it was honestly too long ago to really remember many details about the system itself. And then I know John though has been playing since advanced, I think, and then
Yeah.
had a bit of a break, and then picked up back into 3.5, I think.
I think they were like writing their character sheets on tablets with chisels and whatnot.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Back in John's day.
Our
He
John.
can't defend himself. I love it.
No, he's not here to. He's not here to defend himself. But then I've been basically forever DMing 5e, really, which is
Yeah.
also another great part about the Incorrigible party, is because I actually get to be a player most often for the show. Emily predominantly runs the majority of our one shots whenever we get a chance to actually do them. So it's great to be able to be a player too.
5e is kind of like your gateway drug into TTRPGs. And then some people just stick with that, and that's all they like to play, and they're good with that. And then other people are like, what else is out there? I probably would have stayed with 5e for pretty much forever. But Nick, who's a friend who has done a lot of DMing for our group, he is very into systems, and he's always buying a new system, trying out a new system, and that's been really cool. Like right now we're playing Marvel Multiverse RPG, which is like a 3D6 based system. And it's funny because I didn't know this because, I like the movies, but I don't know too much about comic book lore. If you roll a 616, that's a critical success,
Okay,
you know,
that's
which I
funny.
guess
Yeah,
is Earth Prime in
yeah.
comic
Earth six
books.
one six is the main Marvel universe. Yeah,
Yeah, so you have one Marvel dice that you can either roll a 6 on it, or if you roll a 1, that's it's replaced by an M, so it's Marvel.
yeah. Okay,
So it's a very cool
that's funny.
system. You can either play with a pre-existing comic book character, or you can create one whole cloth. We have created our own characters, and I would say there's a lot of things that are not as intuitive as in 5e within, combat and damage taking and things like that. But I find that every new system you play, you get to experience something new and unique and interesting. So I don't know how many other does anyone have a favorite non 5e system?
I don't know that it's the system or just like the fun that we had with it, but paranoia.
I haven't played that one.
Yeah, Paranoia is great. Yeah, we try to do when we can for our patrons different systems. Like we've played. Oh yeah, well the last one we played I think went on the main feed was Draw Steel from MCDM Productions, which
Hmm.
was it's still like a D20 system, right? So it's very similar, but it's really like if you like tactical combat, then it's going to be the system for you. So it's really interesting. I ran damn, what was that underwater one? You guys were all in the complex or something. It was
Yeah, I
I
can
forget what it
remember
was.
playing. I can't remember what the name of the system was.
And we've dabbled with blades like differing or takes on Blades in the Dark. You know, Blades in the Dark basically use a core system, right? And many other systems like tweak the what's there, right? Like kind of like the Fate system too, right?
Oh, Fate. I don't think I've played the actual Fate core, but I have played Fate Accelerated. And as far as like you just want we've did a few games called movie roles where we basically took a pre-existing franchise and set like a created an adventure within it. So we've done like Jurassic Park, we did Haunted Mansion, we did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I love the simplicity of the system where it's like it's very versatile. And I love the stunts aspect within Fate Accelerated. I don't know if that's in core as well, but yeah, that's one of my favorite systems there, Fate.
Yeah, I mean it's really good basis. Like that was like the Princess Bride we played is kind of Fate-ish. I mean, it uses Fate dice, but so I guess that's a little different. But yeah, the dice itself, the plus minus dice itself, like it's an interesting concept. Just it really quickly look. I guess that's kind of takes away from those math nerds, maybe, right? You just kind of look at this very simple addition subtraction and then see how your roll comes out. But
Yeah.
well, I noticed on your channel you have a two-parter of 10 candles.
Yeah, 10 Candles is another like amazing system because it is so collaborative. Basically, if anyone hasn't played it before, it's like a horror survival game where everyone going in knows that their character by the end will die. So you're basically living in a world without sun and complete darkness, and there is some type of monster out there. But it's a zero prep game for the most part, where you're basically given here's the scenario, you create your characters there at the game table, and then you run through it, and every time someone fails a check, you blow out a candle, and with all the other existing candles that are still lit, everyone establishes a truth about the world. And the only rules are like it can't break another pre-existing truth, and it like can't be anything about the monsters, but other than that, they can state whatever they want. And so you have an extremely collaborative storytelling system within 10 Candles, and it's as far as like playing in person, it's one of the best games out there because if you're in an environment where you can actually have real lit candles,
Yeah,
and then you have your note cards which you actually physically burn when you're like burning your traits, which is like a kind of like getting advantage in other systems. It's really fun and very ambient driven heavy, or not ambiance. Sorry, not ambient.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. We did get a chance to play it with the Incorrigibles in person last April, and yeah, it's definitely something. And I think we all really enjoyed it. And like you say, the collaboration of it, like so collaborative,
Yeah.
like immensely collaborative, especially compared to others. You compare it to even D&D, and yeah, there's definitely lots of room for collaborations when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, but like you need it for 10 candles. Like it's driven by that collaboration for 10 candles.
Yeah.
And you are correct. You're right when the in person and the candles are slowly wicking down, and you just know your time is running out because I mean they're supposed to serve as a timer as well, right? So how did you deal with that kind of aspect of that online, or did you kind of just like ignore that?
So we used a virtual tabletop. We actually used Foundry for that, which is extremely versatile. You can make pretty much anything you want within Foundry. So we essentially had just like virtual candles on the screen that I could click a button to turn them on or off, and then I think I used something, I don't even remember what, to kind of emulate the note cards that you use within the system. But yeah, it worked out fine. My favorite part in any 10 Candles game, especially for someone who's never played it before, which I'm not going to spoil what it is, but just like the ending, that moment in the dark when everybody's dead, and then you do that one final thing, that is like, it gives me goosebumps
Right.
every time.
Yeah, yeah. We really want to try to do an episode of the podcast for 10 Candles. It's kind of been in the back of my brain since we very loosely chatted about it, and like what type of auditory cue could I have that could represent potentially the candles? And I don't know, I'm still racking my brain on how to creatively put it together in just strictly audio format. It might be a challenge.
I had the benefit of being able to use visuals in mind to represent the candles, but if you're trying to present it audio only, first of all, that sounds like an amazing thing to listen to, like when trying to go to sleep at night. But like, yeah, I can see how there could be challenges of emulating the candles. Maybe just like a breath or something like that. I don't know.
We have had feedback from listeners saying that they've used our show to help them get to sleep at night. So I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. I choose to.
So you mentioned Foundry. For us, when we're playing, we use Roll20, and like our show leans way more into the RP side. So our combat, especially in our campaign too, just the way the campaign is going, they're kind of few and far between. So I would say we mostly dabble into Roll20, but obviously, so your home group, you say you have people kind of everywhere. So you you basically remote play then, or is it kind of a mix?
Yeah, we use Discord for audio, and then we just use Foundry for the virtual tabletop. Like I said, Foundry for me is amazing because basically, if you know just a little bit of coding, or if you here's another instance of using ChatGPT. If you can convince ChatGPT to do the coding for you, you can do just about anything. As far as, it's all JavaScript, so you can create custom modules to anything you can do in JavaScript. You can do within Foundry. So it's extremely powerful, but also has a lot of built-in presets. If there's a system out there, there's probably someone who's adapted it into Foundry. Another thing I like about it is there's no membership. But here, I feel like suddenly like Foundry owes this show a sponsorship. But like, you don't have to sign up for anything. You just literally go to the web address and you can log right in. The only downside of Foundry is that you can use something like Forge or whatever it's called, to like have a Foundry instance that's already set up for you. But if you're trying to set up Foundry from scratch and host it from scratch, oh my gosh, that is like a nightmare. You have to have like a computer science degree to get this thing up and running on your own like private server. Other than that, terrible thing I mentioned, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, other than the thing that would make it so you can't use it at all, it's awesome.
Sponsorship revoked. Have you ever tried Foundry?
Yeah. So actually, we had someone in our Discord for our IP Discord ran a game for a bunch of us, and he loves Foundry. He's all about it. And so yeah, did get to see the functionality locking down the tokens so you can control people going around the room and opening doors and getting all the view of that is maybe not quite ready yet as the person running the game. So yeah, it seems like there's a ton of interesting and cool functionality that almost it feels like it bridges the gap between in-person play and remote play. Like there's
Yeah.
almost something that like you can almost touch fingertip to fingertip from either side of the spectrum of how you can play a game, right?
Yeah. And another reason I still love Foundry, but another reason other than that you just pay once and you have it forever aspect, at the time, Roll20 did not have the greatest servers. And then, like, especially during COVID, half the time we tried logging in, just the servers were down or like crawling at a snail's
Oh
pace.
yeah, yeah.
So there was that issue too of just sometimes Roll20 just did not work. They've gotten a lot better in the past few years, but at that time, that was a consistent issue we were having with it.
That's a bummer. That's the last thing you want when you're trying to, there's often many things that are getting in the way of regularly playing with your
Oh,
group. You don't
absolutely.
need the medium you're using to be another problem too.
Right. You finally get your group together, schedules finally align, you log in, and just the website's down.
Yeah,
Oops.
yeah. Hey, that's also another reason to maybe not rely solely on D&D Beyond either if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Just in case. You have a paper copy, it can never hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd say Roll20 serves our purposes.
One other thing that we kind of talked about, potentially talking about the show, that I found to be an interesting subject of conversation is we finally have all 3 core rule books for the 2024 5e, whatever people call it. I don't know what to call it.
5e.2.
Yeah, wow. 0.5, 2024 5e, it's like a mouthful no matter what you try to call it. It is the stupidest thing ever. Honestly, they should have stuck with one D&D. Like, legitimately, compared to all these random names we have now, they should have just stuck with what they were originally purporting it as.
Yeah, unfortunately that was connected to some other controversies within Hasbro world.
Oh,
So,
really?
well, that's when the whole OGL happened.
It was, yeah,
And
it was the
so
same
one
time,
D&D
yeah.
became like toxic suddenly. And so yeah, you want to get away.
That negative association.
Plus, I don't know. I feel like at one point in time they were going to push it in a new direction far more than what they actually ended up pushing it, because it does kind of feel like just a refresher now with the new rules, new player's handbook and whatnot. But yeah, at one point in time when they were playtesting, they were doing some interesting things as far as changes they were making to druids and I don't. I did not do as much playtesting as I probably should in order to speak about it. But yeah, by the time they went around and decided what direction to go with it, they kind of just went, "We're good." 5e, it's not really broken. Let's not try to fix it too much.
Yeah, honestly, the whole ordeal just seems completely half-assed to me. Like, so I did pick up the new PHB and the new monster manual. I don't think I'll get the DMG. I don't know, unless I see people saying there's some really really cool stuff in it or useful resource stuff in it. I'm not gonna waste the money on it.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Is it?
The best thing about it is, in my opinion, actually the Greyhawk setting that they include with it. But it's a real mishmash. Some of it feels like it's something you can read just on any kind of like Reddit advice thread. Other parts of it seem almost like a very dense textbook material on how they explain some things. And then some things are like, oh, that is a very good idea. And it's all kind of like mashed together in a blender. So it's personally some of the best Dungeon Master's guides I've read have been like the Daggerheart playtest materials. If you have gone through those, there's like some excellent D&D game master advice in that one, because it's not just about like a Daggerheart specifically, but just like creatively thinking at the table and like good table etiquette, good collaboration at the table as well.
See, but that stuff is what should exist in a player's handbook, the book that the majority of people at the table are going to be reading and have in their hands.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
how is the 2024 PHB like almost 1.5 times the size of the 2014, but have half the content in it? I don't understand how they did it. I don't get how they did it. It is a fucking marvel how they did it.
They said they couldn't do it.
Yeah, they said it couldn't be done, but they found out. I will say, though, the general layout and flow of information throughout the 2024 PHP is far better and far more conducive to learning the game.
It's crazy that it took them 5 editions to be like, oh, maybe we should put how to play in the beginning of the book.
Or maybe we should put the class's specific spell list with the other information that the class has. Like,
Exactly.
whoa, like what the fuck?
It's because I think most times when you get like a 170-page book, like you maybe get through like 12 pages and then you're like, I'm good. So to put like the rules in those first 12 pages is like, chef's kiss. Going to the Dungeon Master's Guide, another problem I have with it, and this is just like, they should have done better, especially with the fact that there's a Greyhawk setting. There is no starter adventure in it. Especially with like, here's how you play. When it's supposed to be a Dungeon Master's Guide for all skill levels, but there's nothing actually breaking down like, here's a monster stat block and here's how to use it. Like kind of what you get in what is that one Stormwreck Isle starter set for 5e is probably like one of the best introduction to DMing modules out there, in my opinion. And unfortunately, with the Dungeon Master's Guide, they give you all this great advice, but I feel like they did not be like, here's your training wheels and here's the adventure you're going to run. And I feel like that would have been very useful.
Well, it's because they're leaving themselves open to create another product that actually does that, so they can sell you yet another
another
module, another book. Yeah, exactly.
You bought all the books, but now you need the essentials.
You have to buy a loot box, and you have a chance to get the essentials.
So what's funny is like reading again back to Reddit, people flame warring on Reddit, but I came across a thread just like 2 days ago talking about the new polymorph spell and the way it's worded, and a DM was complaining that their druid player kept just using polymorph to heal their parties, and the way this player interpreted it, he would cast polymorph, and as per the wording of the spell, the way it works now is they gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the beast's HP level or whatever that they get. So they get temp hit points rather than another pool of hit points to, I guess, try to make it easier to when you lose the pool and your form is reduced and you're not juggling 2 totals, you're still got your normal HP total, right? But the way this player interpreted it and the way it's worded, and people were arguing on this thread for pages and pages and pages, is that this druid player was just polymorph one of their fellow players that was like 2 HP or whatever. They would get this huge boost of temporary HP. Then they would just break concentration, and argued that there's nowhere in the spell that says they lose the temp HP when they lose concentration on the spell. It's worded the other way around. When the temp HP is reduced, then the form goes away, but not specifically worded the other way around. When the form drops, you lose, right? So it's like, people are like, oh, well, they made temp HP now a general rule, and it's specific versus general overruling, and people were just going back. And it's like, how did this slip by? Because this literally seems like, is it just people's reading comprehension? Because I don't even know.
I have not. I've played a couple of sessions actually of the new rule set, so I've not gone like too deep into it. Actually, I've not played much 5e in general lately, but yeah, that does seem like an oversight, doesn't it?
So the spell specifically says the target gains a number of temporary hit points equal to the hit points of the beast form. The spell ends early on the target if it has no temporary hit points left. Target is limited, blah, blah, blah. But that basically, that little clause is the form goes away when you run out of temp. But if you break concentration, do you lose the temp even though you know what I mean? Like, it's just so stupid.
I feel like this is a case of like, I think there's a specific way of saying this that's used within the community that I can't think of at the moment, but it's like rules as written versus like what they intended it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're being a reasonable person, you would assume that the intention of
Yes,
that
you
spell is
would.
that when you break concentration, the same thing
Yeah.
happens as if you were reduced to 0 temp HP, right?
Yeah,
The spell ends.
as intended. Yeah, it seems like the boost is linked to the polymorph. So when the polymorph ends, the
Right.
boost ends.
Exactly.
Except they didn't say that.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
It has to be intuited.
It was a whole thing because then it was like, oh well, the fault. What if you? What about false life? When false life has a duration of instantaneous now, so when that's done, do you lose your temp HP because you're not concentrating? Right? It was just like a whole like snowballed into just unclear rules dictation, is what it sounded like, right?
And sometimes Hasbro's guilty of that. Like they say, oh, you can try this, but then there's no explanation as to how to actually do the thing that they suggest. Like I know the thing that I was very I was very excited about because I thought it seemed like a cool setting, but then I actually bought it too. But then when reviews started coming in, like I'm like, oh, is Spelljammer,
Yeah.
where it's like set in space, and one of the big things about it is your spaceship you travel on. But then apparently there's like no actual ship to ship combat rules in it, and so
Oh
I still have it on my shelf unopened, the Spelljammer box set, and
no.
the art's pretty. You know, I like it. I like having things on my shelf, but yeah, just sometimes D and Hasbro is guilty of vagueness. And then they try to, this is what annoys me, is they try to cover it up with their rulings not rules philosophy. But it's like, at least give me the rules as an option, you know? Don't make me entirely rely on rulings because you don't give me anything to work with.
Yeah, I mean, a ruling still needs to exist in some type of framework. Like,
Right.
hello.
Like the polymorph potion is a perfect example of that. And I'm sure like they used to have sage advice where with Chris Perkins, which sometimes had some dubious rulings in itself. Like I'll tell you one of my favorites in a second. But yeah, they used to have that. Now it's just like it's whatever you feel like. It's sometimes just based on vibes, you know, which that's why I feel like some people prefer really crunchy systems like Pathfinder because like everything is so structured and you still got a lot of versatility in what you can do, but like everything has a rule associated with it. With the sage advice, before we go on to another topic, the one that I'm like, really is there's a question someone asked that was, does the see invisibility spell end disadvantage on trying to hit an invisible target? And I believe Chris Perkins' ruling on that was no, you still have disadvantage when hitting an invisible creature when you have see invisibility because it's actually the oh gosh, what do they call it? Just like the effect is that you have disadvantage, not like the fact you can actually see it. And I'm like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that doesn't make any intuitive sense. I mean, that's
No.
another thing in the 2024 version is they've changed some keywords on like hidden versus invisible, and people are confused about that too. Apparently, I don't know. I don't know. It's all crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah.
The one thing the other good thing I would say at least about the monster manual is I liked a lot of some of the updated artwork in the monster manual.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Basically, the I mean, they omitted. I think there's no orcs in it at all, which I don't understand why. But they added a bullet pup. Fantastic. I didn't know I needed a
Interesting.
bullet pup. I didn't know I needed a baby bullet stat block, but it now exists. I'm happy. I'm
Yeah, I really like the new monster manual. There are like the omissions, which like I don't want to get into the reasons for the omissions, but just like the fact that orcs are not a monster in the monster manual. I'm like that that's surprising to me. That seems like such a integral to the game kind of thing. And I get the explanation of, well, now that it's a choosable player's race in a player's handbook, there's not elves in the monster manual, there's not like gnomes in the monster manual. So since it's a playable race, why should there be orcs in the monster manual? I'm like, I see the logic in that argument, but like, come on, just have the orcs in the monster manual.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I mean, because they still have bugbears and obviously still goblins. So like the
Yeah,
goblin, like the rest of the goblinoids in that like tree of humanoid like still exists too. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know. Because so does that then are they then precluding themselves up front for making additional content of like here's a goblin playable race? Like that stuff exists in old 5e now, right? With all
Right.
of the books out and stuff, like all that exists. Are they now if they're gonna die on that hill, they're now precluding themselves from creating a bunch of content?
Well, I'm sure they'll say, well, we were only talking about like the core player's handbook. And I don't think they ever officially, Hasbro ever officially came out and said that. That's more like people explaining the logic of it being
The
omitted.
speculation.
Yeah, speculation. Just like, I don't know. That one surprised me that they would remove that. And again, I because the orcs and drows and things like that were tied to some controversies within bioessentialism. That's in my opinion, they're like, oh, we've been criticized for these specific things. Let's just remove those specific things. But then you go and you look at well, what are they? The hobgoblins, and it's like hobgoblins are bred for war. And I'm like, wait, you're doing the same bioessentialism that
Yeah.
like made you take out these other things. Like it's like you did not actually learn the lesson that people were trying to teach you right there. So I don't know. Again, it just seemed like, oh, we've been criticized for this. Yoink, it's out of there. But then like don't actually, I don't know.
No, it's more half measures. It's just like what this is. It's 5.5 because there's a half a measure after 5. That's what it is. Okay.
But yeah, I like it. I have not played as many like games of it as the older 2014 edition, but I feel like for newer players, it's so much more accessible. I just wish that with, when I did a criticism of the book, like I wish there was like more actual new content in the player's handbook. Don't just give me the same rehashed subclasses that already in the 2014 edition. Give me something new.
I mean, it's like a large errata, the majority of it, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I mean, I haven't read more than a couple pages of the 2014, but I watched your video about
that's true.
the latest.
100% true.
Can attest.
And there were probably spell pages for his wizard. That's it.
I like the pictures mostly. But yeah, I watched your video and that'll probably be as far as I get with the book. But I liked that it seems to be very, very tailored towards being approachable from new people, because I'm all for expanding the hobby, and I think D&D and TTRPGs in general are just like an excellent way to enrich your life and your experience with other people. Like I think it's I would love for more and more people to just experience this really, really a cool hobby that I think a lot of people don't really understand what it's all about. So if it makes it easier for new people to get into it, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and technically you can play it for free with the basic rule set. But it's one of those hobbies that technically you can do it for free, but people spend a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
It's like running. Technically you can run for free, but like then you buy all this special shoes and equipment and all this other stuff, and suddenly running becomes a very expensive hobby. It's like same thing with D&D. I don't even want to know how much I've spent on like D&D and TTRPG stuff. But like you're an adult and I don't have kids. And I'm like, what else am I going to do with my life?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, like golfing, or I don't know, name a hobby that people get into. You can spend a ton of money on hobbies. So I think, as long as you're able to pay your bills and put food on the table, you're an adult. Do what you can't take your money with you. So do what you want to do with it.
Well, that is a nice positive note to finish the show on. Again, thank you so much for being our second ever guest for our kind of a spin-off show here.
This was so much fun. If you guys are like, oh shoot, don't have anybody, just invite me back. I'll come back.
Absolutely.
This was so fun. You guys are great to talk to, and we covered a wide range of topics. And I just love how it's we can talk about whatever we want. It's like hanging out with friends. It's a very good vibe you guys got here.
Perfect. We appreciate that very much.
It's just nice. Unfortunately the rest of the crew are not very sociable and are a bit rude, but
yeah, we're the best two of the Incorrigible party. Yeah, absolutely. But please, could you remind our listeners where they can find you, all of your tags, anything else you want to promote here?
I'm on TikTok and YouTube under Double Crit Fail. I think I'm on Blue Sky with Double Crit Fail. I am Double Crit Fail on all of the things. So come check me out, and maybe I'll have something that you like. That's the best pitch I can make.
Nailed it.
Honestly, that's about as good as some of my pitches go for the Incorrigible party. So you're in good company, believe me.
Be there or don't.
Yeah. Listen or don't. Yeah, that's about what it boils down to.
Well, I've been Bill. I play Hellcruck Tread. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Leland Steele. Happy adventuring. This has been a Sounds of Steel production.